It's the French Revolution. Anarchy, chaos, bloodshed. The same kind of thing you'd see in Cleveland if they ever win the Super Bowl, which, I'll be honest with you, I don't see it happening. Well, anyway, if you're ever in a situation where you have to name the last three Bourbon kings, hey, you're in luck. It's easy. Louis the 14th, Louis the 15th, and Louis the 16th. They have two things in common. One, they're all related to each other, father, son, that'll be his grandson. And the other thing you don't want to do with these guys, never ever give these people a credit card. I would not be surprised if I ever saw Louis the 14th, 15th, or 16th hanging out in front of a grocery store looking for money because these guys ran their country into so much debt, it started a revolution that changed the world. Of course, the scary thing is they already had a revolution a little bit earlier that changed the world, but nobody in Europe was paying a lot of attention to it. Yeah, ever hear of the American Revolution? Take Mr. H's US 1 class. Nonetheless, the American Revolution happened. They were talking about democracy and representative government and all this other crazy stuff. Who was in that war again? Yeah, Britain on one side. Who was on the American side? Yeah, France. And some of these soldiers came back with some of these ideas too. But, so far it hasn't infected anybody. But don't worry, it's coming. So the French Revolution started basically because of debt. Debt and a stubborn belief to realize that the world had progressed beyond, say, the 13th century. And all of this thing came crashing down on Louis the 16th. Louis the 14th, we talked about all his wars and the crushing debt. Louis the 16th, bunch of wars, crushing debt. Just keep pushing off on the next guy. They came down on Louis the 16th and just totally destroyed everything. The old regime, or in France, Ancien Regime, I think. I don't know. I don't speak French. But the old regime, basically, France is an absolute monarchy. The Bourbon family owns it and it does what it wants. And you're like, hey, Mr. H, what happened to being an enlightened despot? What happened about that? French response, what about it? Right? We're going to party like it's 1400. They haven't realized the rest of the world has continued on a path somewhere. So the king rules absolute power, and we know why, right? Remember Louis the 16th, I'm sorry, Louis the 14th, and the kind of childhood he had, and he didn't really trust anybody and didn't really trust the nobles, so he kind of ran everything himself very tight. And of course, Louis the 15th, being his son, ended up taking that from the old man. And then we got Louis the 16th, who's really not a bad guy, but to be honest with you, he doesn't really have a lot of backbone when it comes to the nobles. Now, the nobles are loosely organized in a thing called a parlement, right? Parliament, except it's very loosely organized, right? Louis the 14th and Louis the 15th never called it into session, or when they did, they never really listened to it very much. But these guys got together and they just had a way of making Louis the 16th say yes when he really wanted to say no, just to kind of say yes to get rid of him, and it started a whole big thing called, the French Revolution. It's a shame because Louis the 16th was a great guy. The only problem people had didn't like his wife too much, Marie Antoinette, because she was Austrian and she tended to spend a lot of money, very lavish lifestyle, and most people in France are poor. How many people are poor? Try 98%. Here's a look at French society. We got the first estate, the clergy, living it up. The second estate, the nobles, they're living it up. The third estate, everyone else, they are barely scraping by. The French first and second estate just taxed the third estate like you will not believe, man. I don't know why. For some reason, they thought it would never end. I mean, history is full of revolutions that start just like this. You push the third estate or the peasantry to the point where you just can't do it anymore. And there's basic failure of math. They don't seem to understand negative numbers, and they also don't seem to understand that 98 to 99% of the third estate, yeah, that means you're very badly outnumbered. There's a lot of those guys out there, man. Hey, the name Custer mean anything to you? Well, you'll find out soon enough, right? So the first estates, the clergy, they get away with everything. There's no taxation. They live it up. The nobles pay next to no taxes. They ask Louis to Louis the 16th to lower the taxes even more, and he lowers the taxes even more. And the third estate has to pay for the whole thing. And it gets to the point that they could take 100% of what the third estate has, and they're still running deficits. They are running deficits in France like you would not believe. Like I said, Louis XIV dumped off on his son, Louis XV dumps it off on his son, and believe me, Louis XVI, if he'd been around long enough, would have done the same thing. Here's everything you need to know about the French Revolution right here in this poster. Here's the clergy, first estate, the nobles, the second estate, and here they are being carried by the third estate. Not allowed to farm anything. The animals are going through the fields, eating everything. He's got this pickaxe he can't use. He can't even, make a farm over here, and he's got to carry these guys around, and they really aren't doing much of anything. And there's no sympathy either. Now, the local priest, kind of like Martin Luther, yeah, they're sympathetic and they know what's going on. They see it going on the ground level. They're trying to give warnings. Hey, we really need to head this off. And there's even a noble here and there who are kind of on the sympathetic to the peasants. They kind of see what's going on. They lower their personal taxes a little bit, and they try to give warnings. Hey, you're really pushing these people. And in case you haven't noticed, there's a lot of them, but no one's going to listen, because if they listened, we wouldn't be talking about this, would we? Now, had they listened to this guy, Henri Jacques Turgot, not Turgot, Turgot, if they listened to this guy, they might have avoided the French Revolution, or at least pushed it back. I got a feeling this thing was happening anyway. He was the finance minister for Louis XVI. He worked for 2 years there, 1774, 1776. He says, we got really huge deficit, and there's really no way to solve this. So we're not going to declare bankruptcy like the Spanish did back in the 1500s, but we can't increase taxes, and we're not borrowing from anybody. Well, nobody wants to hear this, so he gets fired. You know what else he said not to do? Don't get mixed up with this American Revolution. If we fight the British, we're going deeper into debt. Well, they got mixed up. They beat the British, didn't gain anything, end up in more debt. He gets fired. He's out of a job. Let's grab some new people, use some new methods, find some new failures here. Hey, Jacques Necker tries to borrow money from others to pay off the debt. What's the problem here? Yeah, all you're doing is you end up replacing old debt with new debt. That's all you've done. Big surprise, doesn't work. What a shock. He gets fired. Now we've got Charles Alexandre de Caillon. He tries to increase public spending. There we are. We'll just increase public spending. And how do you increase public spending? How's the government do that? Yeah, it needs to raise taxes. So that doesn't work. And he looks around and just walks right up to Louis XVI and just simply tells the king, listen, we're going to have to cut spending, and you're going to have to start selling off church property. He gets fired and exiled. Yeah, they really got mad at this guy. So here we are going right down the side of the cliff here. It's like a rock slide or an avalanche. You see the first couple rocks come bouncing down, then there's a lot more, then comes the snow and the ice, and before you know it, boom, whoever's under there, you start speaking about him in past tense. So they call the Estates General together. Wow, this is the first time they've called the Estates General together since 1614. So you've got representatives from the clergy, the first estate. You've got representatives from the second estate, the nobility. You've got everybody else, the third estate. And they get into an argument about how to vote, because the third estate is going to vote to reduce taxes. And the first and second don't want it, and that's how they're going to vote. That way, the first and second can always outvote the third, even though the third estate is 98% of the country. Third estate doesn't like that. So here's an idea. Let's go a popular vote instead, because since the third estate is 98% of the country, they've got a lot more delegates. Yeah, they don't like that either. And in true political fashion, everybody just argues and argues and argues all the way from April, May, and June, and nothing gets done. So the third estate declares, since we represent 98% of the country, we are now the National Assembly. Louis XVI doesn't particularly like this, and the nobles, of course, tell him to shut the door so they can't come in to meet. So they go out to the tennis court and take an oath saying they're going to create a more equitable form of government. And here we go, more rocks coming down the hillside. So a lot of nobles say, let's call out the army, and bad idea. Cue the Crazy Town music, because France has just plunged into downtown of Crazy Town. They stormed the Bastille. right? Royal prison. The people have gone crazy. Why? Bad timing, because look, it's July, it's really hot, everyone's poor, they have no money, and they jacked up the price of bread, and guess what happened, man? People starving, angry, have gone crazy. They call out the army, not going to do any good. Why? Who are these guys? Look at this. They're the army. They've joined the people. Why would they join the people? Where does the army come from, man? The officers are going to be in the nobility. What about the enlisted guys? Yeah. Oh, they've joined the people. They're bringing a cannon up and start blasting away at the Bastille. They storm the Bastille. They kill the warden. They liberate exactly 6 prisoners. But it doesn't matter because everything's gone crazy and the world has turned totally upside down. All because of bad credit cards and the price of bread. So, France goes crazy. Not that took a lot for that to happen. I got a friend of mine who's French. He tells me all the time, French are insane. He thought we were crazy. So, the first thing that happens, the National Assembly declares the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. What's that all about? Does that sound familiar? Hey, I got a feeling some of those soldiers over there with the Americans came up with this idea. No longer are we merely subjects. We are now men. We are now citizens, working on the women angle. And we don't have to listen to you simply because you are a king. We're going to have a constitution, written plan of government. Where did I get that idea from? Louis XVI, since the army has basically joined the people, reluctantly accepts the Constitution in 1791. They rewrote this thing so many bloody times. Well, they finally got it right. Everyone's happy with it, sort of. All right. Everyone outside looking at France, wondering what's going on. And now France has gone from the absolute monarch of the Bourbons to a constitutional monarchy. So France is being run right now by the National Constituent Assembly. It is in constant gridlock, factions fighting each other, nothing gets done, economic situations continue to deteriorate, we have famine, we've got leprosy making a comeback over here, scurvy, of course, no one's getting any nutrition, even rumors of cannibalism in some of the outlying parts of France. And the reason nothing gets done, because like every other political organization on the planet, it falls into factions. And look at these factions. I'm not sure I'm saying this right, but fainéant, these are the royalist people, right? They're very conservative. They're trying to preserve the monarchy, and some of these guys probably would like to just reestablish the monarchy. But, we've gone beyond that, not happening. We got the Girondists. These are people in the middle, right? Yeah, we'll keep the monarchy, constitutional monarchy, and we have representative government. But let's make sure it doesn't get too crazy because, we're not really getting anything done. And the Montagnards, that's means mountaineer. These are the radicals. These are the guys who want to get rid of the monarchy completely and, I don't know, maybe build a democracy, kind of like that thing across the other side of the Atlantic. They're considered radicals. And of course, then we got the Jacobins who are really off the deep end. They want to destroy the royal family, destroy everything, and rebuild France from the very, very bottom. No way these guys are ever going to get on top. Here it comes. Also, that's where we get right, center, and left. Right? Royalists, that's conservative, considered the right end of the political spectrum because they sat on the right side of the Constituent Assembly chamber. The Girondists, considered moderate, in the middle, they sat in the middle. And the Montagnards, the radicals, sat on the left side. Jacobins, I guess they were very far on the left, sitting against the wall or something. I'm not sure. So this is where we get the right, left, moderate thing today, the spectrum, conservative, liberal, all that thing comes from here. So far right, royalist, keep it sort of like a monarchy. Girondist, keep it in the middle. We got a monarchy, but it's constitutional, doesn't really do anything. And the Montagnards, we want a democracy, kind of like we see on the other side of the Atlantic. And the Jacobins, they not only despise the French king, they hate kings everywhere. What's the view from the outside? Well, everybody always thought the French were kind of crazy, but now they are seriously concerned. We have the Declaration of Pillnitz, the European powers, led by Austria. Why Austria? Marie Antoinette's Austrian. They declare that they will not allow Louis XVI or his family to be harmed. So if you touch them, Austria is coming down on you along with every other European power. Because when the Jacobins are screaming about destroying the French monarchy, they're not going to stop there. They want to destroy every single monarchy on the planet. Boy, they're thinking big, aren't they? Well, France decides to go nuts and declare war on Austria and then Prussia. Why? Because things aren't working out too great in France. Everything's chaos. The government's in gridlock. Lots of factions. Nothing unites a country like declaring war on a foreign enemy. So they're going after Austria and then they're going after Prussia, and everybody's united together, sorta, kinda, maybe. In June of 1792, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, they make a run for it. No chance they get caught. They get tossed in prison, and suddenly this war with Austria and Prussia turns real. There wasn't really much fighting. They kind of stared at each other. This had happened in April. Well, now in July, it just got real, and they actually commit a major, major error. The Brunswick Manifesto. The Duke of Brunswick, who's commanding both the Austrian and Prussian forces, have decided to announce that they are going to go to war with France, the real now, to reestablish an absolute monarchy. Ah, here we go, man. The landslide has occurred. Now, France, which was paralyzed with inaction and really not enthusiastic about war with Austria and Prussia, suddenly they've become united. Everything they wanted to happen has now happened. France is united because these foreigners, Austria and Prussia, are coming to destroy our government in France. It's our government, not yours. Stay away. Now it has happened. We call this the Wars of the French Revolution. Okay, it's the first coalition, war the second coalition, war the third coalition. It goes all the way up to the fifth coalition. Okay, I'm going to go easy on you. Let's just call it Wars of the French Revolution here, 1792 to 1802, and of course Napoleon shows up. See how far this thing keeps going? Yeah, basically it's a quarter century of just constant fighting. Had a brief break over here. So now the Jacobins are kind of taken over, and everything has gone insane. They declared war on Austria, declared war on Prussia. They're going after Britain. They've invaded Italy. Right, they're about to attack Spain. They declared war on Britain because that's Britain. France and Britain don't like each other. Right, even Sweden gets mixed up, and eventually Napoleon's headed all the way to Russia, but we're not there yet. Meanwhile, the big hero today is Napoleon. He's winning big battles down in Italy. They eventually decide to send him to Egypt because he's getting a little bit too popular. Maybe he'll come back and overthrow the government. We don't want that, do we? France is a republic. Yes, since the monarchist tried to run off, he's in prison. He's going to get the guillotine in 1793. And we've just decided to get rid of the monarchy. The Jacobins are now running the show. They are far to the left. They are insane. And is now the first French Republic. They didn't call it the first. They simply called it French Republic. France has had 5 since then. But nonetheless, here we are, September 22nd, 1792. We have a republic. Bring out the guillotine. Here is Robespierre. He is basically a dictator, the Committee of Public Safety, and he's running around lopping off heads. Right, the Reign of Terror from 1793 to 1794, 16,000 executions confirmed in Paris, 25,000 confirmed out in other parts of France. That's just confirmed. There were probably a lot more. Robespierre is totally off his rocker. He can't stand kings. He's ready to go to war. He is a little bit worried, though, about Napoleon, who's getting very, very popular all his victories. He's the one who sent him to Egypt to go fight against, the British over there. And eventually everyone's going to turn on him because, let's face it, he's out of his mind, and he's going to lop his head off. That's how this stuff happens, man. The French Revolution. When you think about the French Revolution, guillotine's what comes to mind. They last executed a person with a guillotine in 1977. Yeah, they used it as late as 1977. Very rare, but they did use it. Haven't used it since. In fact, I think it might still be on the books. Not sure. I'll get back to you on that. But we still have the guillotine around in this country. As you can see, it's evolved here into a bagel slicer. Same idea. That's where they got the idea from, the guillotine. Probably had to wait a little bit here before they rolled this one out. Too many bad memories, Well, after Robespierre, gets his head chopped off, Napoleon comes back and reorganizes the government. He's basically running it. He calls it a directory. You got 5 people, right? Also calls it a consul at one point, trying to bring the old Roman term back. From 1795 till November 1799, Napoleon's out there fighting everybody, winning most of the time. The government's still in chaos, but somehow, it's functioning enough to win because Napoleon's such a great leader. And then on November the 9th of 1799, he decides to simply overthrow the government. He now calls himself Consul Napoleon. He'll become an emperor in 1804. So there we are so far with the French Revolution. We've gone from an absolute monarchy to a democracy, to an insane democracy, to basically a military dictatorship all the way again. And it's been mostly in France and Italy and parts of Germany. Don't worry, it's going to spread because when Napoleon gets his hands on the reins of power, French armies all over the place, one coming near you very soon. This is what you feel like at the end of this lecture? Okay, I'll let it go for now. We'll talk about Napoleon in just a bit. Have a great day.